Thomas Jefferson and some common misconceptions about history, and she hopes to help people understand that and maybe think differently about what we consider is true. So here we go.
Can you all hear me? Fantastic. Okay, we'll get started. When was the last time something you texted or wrote in an email was misread or misunderstood? Do you remember the consequences? Now, we're misunderstood all the time. Because tone is missing from our written communications, meaning can be lost. When we write a message, we're leaving much of its interpretation to the understanding of the receiver. So take that picture of getting something lost in text and stretch the scale to 200 years. The text is now a handwritten letter from the 1780s, and the surrogate receiver is a historian from today. The implications of a misinterpretation have a ripple effect. The historian writes her opinion in a paper, which then gets published and read by others, maybe even making it into the textbooks they would read in high school. And that, in turn, influences the next generation's understanding of the historical narrative. Take Thomas Jefferson, for example, one of our founding fathers. What conceptions do you have in mind when you think of Jefferson? Probably a tacit intellectual, a politician, an inventor, maybe even an architect or a farmer. And we know all these thanks to the things he left behind. Now, historians spend a lot of time looking at the products of the past in order to form conjectures about their producers, or the people and events that left their legacies in the form of a priceless relic, a national document, a national park, or even something as trivial as a personal letter. These are just two of the thousands that Jefferson wrote over the course of his lifetime. His letters are a gold mine of information about the time during which he lived, and even more fascinatingly, about himself. So let's zoom in on a period of time that was particularly interesting: Jefferson's time in France. Now, Jefferson's relationship with the French is a subject that's often vastly oversimplified. AP US history students, and actually many historians today, would simply say that he was a Francophile. He loved France in the way of oui, oui, baguette. But, désolé s'il y a des personnes qui parlent français ici. J'espère que vous ne le prenez pas mal. But this is where it gets interesting, because I think there was a whole other side to Jefferson's relationship with the French. In August 1784, Jefferson's diplomatic appointment as American minister to Paris finally granted him the opportunity to experience an intellectual and cultural hub of Europe firsthand. And he spent 5 years there, and that's definitely enough time for him to get an intimate glimpse of the French, their culture, their society, and their lifestyles. And he wrote all about his thoughts in his letters, both to Americans and to French people. So, what's interesting is that there's a difference in his language when he communicates with each of those, whether it's to the French or the Americans. And by that I mean the particular phrases he chooses, and the words that he emphasizes, and the points he understates. When historians and archivists look at the records, they ask themselves two questions: what's here and what isn't? So if we apply this on a micro scale while looking at Jefferson's letters and ask ourselves, what did he say and what didn't he say? We can really get into nooks and crannies of his meaning without stopping at the face value of his words. But we have to recognize that there are potentially more interpretations of his writing. And that's exactly what I did for 3 weeks last summer at the Stanford Summer Humanities Institute. And here's what I found. Although Jefferson admired the French and their culture, he believed that their character and their society were inferior to those of Americans. How can I prove this? Well, we'll start with the admiration part. In a letter to Eliza House Trist, a fellow Virginian, Jefferson wrote following. Actually, I'm not sure. Charles Bellini, I'm sorry, he was a Virginian professor. He wrote, "Were I to tell you how much I enjoy the architecture, sculpture, painting, music, I should want words. It is in these arts they shine." Now, among the French, Jefferson found a group of very cultured and educated people who expanded and shared and developed his interests. He studied great examples of classical architecture while he was in France, and he brought those ideas back with him to build Monticello, his famous home. He admired their art and envied their music, and actually went shopping, did a lot of shopping while he was in France, eventually shipping back 86 crates of furniture, utensils, and artworks back home after him. So I think that Jefferson really did admire the French culture, but his opinion changed when it came to his opinion of the general French people and their society. The following is part of a letter to Eliza House Trist, Virginia. He said that the French were plagued by one single curse, that of a bad form of government. The people are ground to powder by the vices in the form of government. Now, Jefferson was pretty directly critical of the French when he wrote to Americans. And he thought that the French monarchy and feudal system at the time was an oppressive force. It's no surprise, considering that he just engineered one of the most famous revolutions of all time, back home against the monarchy. And he even wrote the breakup letter, the Declaration of Independence. So, 2 years later, though, on the eve of the French Revolution, he wrote to Madame de Tissé. Now, Madame de Tissé was a wealthy, well-known, and well-respected Parisian salon hostess. She's very well able to talk government. And Jefferson had several suggestions for the new representative system in the French National Assembly. And this was regarding the election of representatives and the division of the nobles and commons to form two houses. And he wrote that two houses so elected would contain a massive wisdom that would make the people happy, the king great, and be as necessary to constitute a rational government. Now here's the funny thing. I suspect that what Jefferson actually meant to subtly imply was that the current system developed by the French themselves did not contain any massive wisdom, that the people were not happy, that the government was not rational and the king wasn't great. Some would say this is true of all government. But the point is, Jefferson hid all this in the form of his own very helpful suggestion. So it sounds much less directly critical of the French. Next object of criticism, the purpose of their society. Now this is a big, big topic, but we'll break it down. He wrote the following to Anne Willing Bingham, who was a worldly socialite from Philadelphia. "Tell me truly and honestly whether you do not prefer the tranquil pleasures of America to the empty bustle of Paris." Now the tranquil pleasures he's referring to here are the simple satisfactions of American farming life. It's important to remember that the US at this time was mostly a nation of farmers, and Jefferson was a strong proponent of a working agrarian society. He saw a greater communal and moral purpose in working directly with the soil. And he believed there was the opposite in the empty lives of Parisians. So, and this was especially among French women who seemed to do nothing else other than host parties and socialize. Now, keeping in mind the importance of farming to Jefferson, let's have a look at what he has to say about French agriculture in a letter to the French Marquis de Lafayette. Ooh. "The soil, the climate, and the productions are superior to those of England, and the husbandry as good, except in one point, that of manure." Now, it's important to note that Jefferson compared French agriculture to English agriculture here, not American. Why? Well, if he did actually compare it to American agriculture, that comparison would probably work out rather unfavorably for the French. And he's writing to a Frenchman here, so of course he tried to maintain an optimistic tone of voice. But the next question is manure. Why manure? Well, I think it's because it's the least offensive thing you could possibly be offended about. Manure isn't something that the French people can supposedly control. Whatever comes out of the rear ends of their livestock is what it is. So Jefferson deliberately chose manure as his one object of explicit criticism here, because it's the least offensive insult you could probably give anyone. I'm sorry, sir, but your French animal poop is not as good as English animal poop. In all seriousness, though, Lafayette, the same General Lafayette who helped out with the American Revolution, by the way, is a French nobleman, so he would be invested in the productivity of French agriculture. And here Jefferson's carefully stepping around the subject and avoiding criticizing the sensitive majority of it. Finally, on the subject of French happiness, Jefferson had the following to say. This was to Virginia and Eliza Hutchins. There are 19 millions more wretched in France than the most conspicuously wretched individual in the whole of the United States. Harsh words. But here again, Jefferson spares nothing when he's comparing the French condition to that of the Americans. And of course, it's an unfavorable comparison. So what does he tell the Frenchmen? Well, here's another part of his letter to Marquis de Lafayette while Jefferson was traveling the countryside. I have been pleased to find among the people, this is my favorite line, a less degree of physical misery than I had expected. In other words, the French people are still pretty miserable, just, less miserable than he thought they'd be. So here again, Jefferson's cleverly working his way around criticizing the French condition while writing to a highly respected Frenchman. So what does all this tell us? Well, besides the fact that Jefferson's a pretty sneaky writer who does his best to be polite, I think we can say that he maintains the same underlying opinions throughout all of his correspondences, whether it's to the French, to the Americans, and whether it's explicit or implicit. I think if we were to draw an easy analogy, we could say that he actually prized the baguette, but thought that the baker himself